Hey,
Hello.
uh, we are buds, and I'm super excited to be talking about Lyric's newest book because there's more than one now. Very
I
exciting.
know. We've
Um,
got a collection going.
my gosh, Gio, look at you. You have full rights to be an author now. Like I say, I'm an author, but I only have one book, and I feel it was really funny. I was thinking
It
about
still counts. Even if it's one, it
Right.
still
I know that it
counts.
does. I know that it does. And it's really funny how people react when you say you've written a book. Um, which I understand now. I didn't when my first book came out because there's a pre-traumatic brain injury and a post-traumatic brain injury experience in my life. Pre-traumatic brain injury is when I wrote my first book. From waking up in the morning going, "Oh, I have a topic," to sending it edited to the printer, 3 months.
Oh, wow. Nice.
That's my pre-brain injury productivity, hyper focus. Like the way I'm personally designed as a neurodivergent human is that as long as I understand the path, things are done in an insane amount of time. But if I don't understand the path, I'm super stuck, super,
Mm.
super stuck, right? I have 4 books in the works right now. I have more than 20 chapters in 2 or 3 of them, but none of them have a clear path for me. So I've done a
Mm.
lot of writing, but I don't have books. They're not, they're not whatever it is my brain and body think they're supposed to be, they are not. So I'm in a holding pattern, right? So, anyways,
Well, can I share an anecdote with you as a writer
yes,
to writer?
yes,
Is when
please.
I decided this needed to come into existence, I have a folder where there are books I am writing, and I opened it and I saved this in there, and I was like, oh, there are 2 other books I started that I completely forgot I started in the folder.
You wrote on Substack a day or 2 or 3 ago. I don't have connection to time anymore. Um, that your response to stupid shit out in the world was going to be another book. It might have been like more personal, like if somebody attacks you, you're going to write another book. It might have been, do you remember, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes,
You wrote a little
yes,
note on Substack. And
yes,
I was
yes.
like, I want that energy so bad. I want to be like, yeah, well, here's a book.
I, the defiance in me. It's like, you need to shut up and stop talking. I'm like, every time you tell me that I'm writing another book, you know,
That's what it was. That's what it was. All
because
right. So
this one is full of things people didn't want me to say or told me to stop sharing, so it's here and, it's out. And I'm ready for those people that told me to shut my mouth to come for me once it really gets out there. But come at me. Come on.
and thank you for having that uh, potentially trauma and demand avoidance soaked courage. Some of us, our courage comes in a very neurodivergent form, right? It's not just, I'm not afraid. It's like, oh yeah, come at me, right? Sometimes it's like really soaked in this weird reaction to a lifetime of trauma. And I don't know if you identify as demand avoidant. I do. Um, I am the weirdest combination of pathological demand avoidance and people pleasing you're ever going to want to meet, right? But I think there are pieces of your journey that you might relate to that fact. Like your
Oh,
inner
yeah.
reality is the come at me, see what you get, right? But
That's me by nature, but for a while I was traumatized into being very fawning and compliant, but
yeah,
that was very unnatural to me. That was like becoming that way was, and that's a central theme in this book,
right.
was completely unnatural, and really just being in that way that's not natural to me was like so devastating to me and got me in a lot of trouble.
Yeah. So for folks who are not going to see the fact or process the fact that you're holding up your book and they won't be able to understand the title, will you speak the title, please?
Yes. So my latest book is called NeuroDivergent Rebels, The Weight of Normal. It's a teal book with a pink brain on the cover. And it is based on the themes of neurodivergent conversion therapy and forced assimilation in all forms, not just in the formal, like structured conversion therapy program kind of a way. And it's, instead of being very like when I was early days, like this is bad, and I wasn't ready to share my own personal trauma early on. This is very personal, and it's actually telling my story of what happened to me and what I've been trying to kind of repair and overcome and rebuild myself in adulthood over the past 9 years since learning I was autistic.
Because of my own journey, and though you and I have some significant dissimilarities, we have some significant similarities as well. But I don't think you need to have lived through the same pile of excrement exactly to know what it is to live in excrement. Um, so I want to be consciously careful of too much comparison because
Yeah.
we've lived very unique lives. I have a minimum of 20 years on you age wise. Um, so even the cultural differences we might have grown up with just because of age, uh, your school system and the way they were trying to do things might have been different from my school system and the way they were trying to do things, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I want to be really careful of making statements that make it sound like we're just like each other. Because everybody
But
has their
it's a but it's a very similar trauma that a lot of neurodivergent people have experienced.
right.
It's
And
what I'm finding since sharing this is it's very relatable to a lot of people.
it's really relatable. Full disclosure, because my autistic need to be constantly painfully honest won't let me say otherwise. I have not completed the book,
That's fair. That's
but I'm a
okay.
little bit more than halfway through. Well, especially with my brain. So pre-brain injury, I was reading always. I had 3 to 5 books going all the time, like heavy, weighty, intellectual, academic. And now I can't read very much, so I have to save the reading capacity that my brain will allow for like emails and texts. Um,
Hmm.
I keep trying to read books, and between half a sentence to 3 pages is all my brain will allow, which makes me deeply sad because, like, a cup of tea and a blanket and a book, right?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
so I don't have that available to me anymore. So I listen. I use Speechify and other apps to read to me.
Hmm.
So I've been listening to your book. Uh, Gwyneth Paltrow has been reading me your book
Oh, wow. That's fun.
because
I
it's one
didn't
of those, like,
realize you could pick celebrity voices on there. That's neat.
it's very, you can have Snoop Dogg read to you.
Oh, wow.
And Snoop Dogg, it has become one of my favorite humans. Like the evolutional journey of that individual just inspires me constantly. And there's such a tremendous heart there in a lot of ways. I mean, everybody's a complicated person, so I'm sure somebody could say, "Oh yeah, but Snoop, fill in the blank," and I'd be like, oh, "Damn it," right? Or Gwyneth or whomever. And so
I'm gonna
sometimes
hold my mouth.
I sometimes I just ask people, please don't. Please, there are only a few voices I can listen to for very long because of my sensory challenges. Like, don't tell me I can't use the voice that I can process because they're a crappy movie. I can't handle it. But anyways, I've been listening to your book. Uh, and a little more than halfway through, And very immediately, I had the experience of relationship and validation. And I'm a I'm an extreme empath. And part of what I mean by that is I don't just feel what other people feel, I invent what other people feel because of my own trauma, right? If I have
Mhm.
felt that bad and I think your experience has been really bad, I might think you feel worse and have like I will have invented extra for you that like you might not even feel.
Mhm.
Um, so I also had like a profound sadness that you went through some of the stuff because I think of you as a friend and I care about you and what happens to you and I cheer on your success. And I always want people to have lovely lives. But there's a significant reality for way too many of us neurodivergent humans. It's just not the life we have. For so many different reasons, but a lot of what you touch on in your book is how people have reacted not only before you understood that you're neurodivergent, but since you've been unmasking, like because I follow you in some of your public spaces, especially like on Substack. Um, I love the Substack platform. It gives all of us creative types so many options in one space.
And it
Um,
doesn't rage bait.
it doesn't rage bait. Uh, but I've been watching you respond to people who feel like they have the right to tell you who to be and what to say.
Oh yeah. But that's the internet, I think, unfortunately. Especially those other
Except
platforms.
it's not the internet, it is the world, because even before the internet, you're old enough, you
That's
had life
true.
pre-internet. The people in your life,
Yeah.
with the possible exception of your parents, because you say you had very loving parents who seemed to accept you for real, and I'm so grateful to know that. Too many of us don't have that experience. Um, but outside of those two people, you share these stories of constantly being told to not be yourself. And so yeah, we have access to that thinking much more broadly and widely than we ever have. But I don't think it's the internet. I think it's that we now have access to way more people because our experience really isn't different. It's just larger. Please feel free to disagree with me. That is my personal belief. We keep blaming the internet. And I had I have more positive input to my life because of the internet than I've ever had.
True. True.
The internet has brought supportive, kind people into my life that I didn't have access to before. The people in my life have been abusive and cruel prior to the internet. I have a fruit fly.
Oh no.
I'm trying so hard not.
I can't see it through the screen, but that
No, you
would
know
bug
we can't
me.
because it's
That
this
would
little
bug
fly,
me.
and it's like
Oh
I'm
no.
losing my mind. So if I start a murderous slapping rage, everybody knows what I'm doing. So
You
okay,
know what
so
it is, I think about the internet maybe is at least social media is it allows those people who get together in cliques and what to bully and mob to do it in a new way. Like Yeah, it's like a very dual thing where it's like, yes, there's so much more access to amazing people because I love my community and I have to
Yeah,
like shepherd it very carefully to keep people who are just nasty and cruel out of it. But it also allows people who wouldn't have access to you otherwise to like micro analyze every little thing you post and like there, I definitely have hate followers who are out there like waiting for me to make some mistake and it's like wow like that's I don't know I live rent free in your heads I guess good for you. I don't know, but since I keep my
yeah,
community locked where they can't comment, they go do their things elsewhere, and every now and then I'll hear NeuroDivergent Rebel did this and I'm like I did what? Didn't know, really? It's like if it's like not even true, I'm like, I don't care. It's so I'm it's like Billy the Kid stories, you know?
so part of my background is with a little bit of education in promotion, not advertising, promotion.
Mhm.
It's a little bit different, right? And one of the things I was taught was that the more people feel inspired to say bad things about you, the more important they think you are.
Oh, that's interesting. I always figured if I'm pissing some people off, I must be doing something right, you
Exactly.
know?
Saying it's this kind of the same thing said differently. And I am so rejection sensitive that I have a really hard time getting my nervous system to be like, cool. Like people took time out of their day to watch my comment and say something crappy about me. The only reason why they would take the time is because they think somebody else is going to see what they have to say and make them important on my coattails.
Mm, yeah.
That's the only reason why somebody's going to feel inspired to say something crappy is they need to feel important and they can't feel important saying something crappy to somebody they don't think anybody else values.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? I used to be a lot more sensitive to it when I first started, like nine
Yeah.
years ago. I didn't understand, especially like other autistic people. I thought when I met other autistic people, we were all going to be friends. It's going to be great, and they're all going to be amazing people. Uh, and I was a lot more vulnerable than I am now before doing a lot of my trauma work. And so I was, getting manipulated and taken advantage of, and people were pretending to be my friends, and they weren't really my friends, and all of that that I just didn't think was a thing that was going to happen with other autistic people. And it was a really hard, rude awakening. But since then, you know what I've realized, and I've noticed a pattern. It's like a lot of times like we've got a crab in a bucket mentality where if someone is succeeding like people want to pull you back down to make sure you're not getting and it's like my mentality is we need to lift everyone up and lift each other up, and that
Mhm.
pulling people down and bringing people down a peg and teaching people like that doesn't work for me. And what I've noticed is it's like the people who I resonate with and whose opinions I care about are the people that are going to come to me and let me know, hey, this thing you said misses the mark. And the people that I noticed like the pattern of that were really just trying to like bring everyone down a peg, they don't address it with you directly. What they'll do is they'll like make a post about you and block you so you can't even see it. And it's
Right.
like, if I can't even see what you're upset that I did, like how can I change my behavior and do better in the future? Because it's like
Right.
when I learn I'm missing the mark, like that's what I love about my community. They tell me, "Hey, this isn't it." Hey, and I'm like, "Oh, thanks." And you apologize, but more importantly to me, because people do these fake apologies and then they continue their bad behaviors. Like, change your freaking behavior. Like, don't apologize to me. Just change your behavior. Just don't do it again. That's
Right.
kind of my ethos on things, and that's kind of been something like for me, learning the pattern recognition. This is like the people who have bad intentions and don't actually want you to learn and grow are the ones that are like block you and then make post after post about you, but you don't see any of that. They're just doing it for attention because they want, like you were saying, that they
Yeah.
want to like use you to boost them up versus like people who are like in community. It's like they're calling you in and being like, hey, you know this isn't it. And because if I can't see that this isn't it, like, I don't know, I'm going to continue making the same mistake. It just,
Sure.
there's a difference between like being in community and just wanting to like go after everyone. That's something that, I've even called people out in the past, and I don't really call people out anymore. I like to address harmful behavior instead of people because it's all systemic. Like a lot of these behaviors
Right.
we learn are from systemic uh, things that we've been taught, that we've been raised in a really toxic culture. And so, like, people that are doing harm don't always know they're doing harm. And, we assume people are acting from bad intentions and don't want to do better. We aren't giving them a chance to do better. And I don't know, goodness knows, I look back at things I posted 9 years ago and they're totally like to me is like, this is so cringe. I was so uninformed back then,
Yeah.
and just try to learn from those mistakes and do better. But there's just a better way I think we could be doing things and handling one another, especially considering in autistic spaces with autistic people, like being SI, being a main thing that a lot of autistic people die from, and taking ourselves out, like we're not being trauma informed at all, and that kind of bothers me. And I wasn't trauma informed when I started, and just what we can cause a lot of harm with what we don't know, but when we learn better, we can do better. If we care enough to change our behavior.
Yeah. Becoming more trauma informed. I won't make the statement that I am trauma informed, in part because I never know what I don't know, right?
Yeah.
But in my process of becoming more and more trauma informed and looking back on some of my behaviors, I have a lot of compassion for that person that I was.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
Nobody else did at the time.
No,
Nobody
definitely
else did at
not.
the time. Uh, it's spectacular how our culture of toxic independence
Hmm.
teaches people that if somebody needs something, that's when you abandon them.
Yeah.
And you criticize them and you shame them and you blame them. But I look back on mistakes that I made, and some of them are pretty big. Like I've raised 3 children into adulthood, and I really don't like some of the things I did as their parent. Um, and I'm profoundly grateful for the healing journey my kids and I have been on. But one thing none of us knew, we were neurodivergent
Hmm.
until we were all adults. Like, and I didn't understand that the life I was living was so full of abuse and gaslighting and right. I was so used to it because
Yeah.
birth forward, I was so used to it, but I didn't recognize it. So this brings me back to your latest book. I think that's an experience that you might relate to, right? You talk about how, you were told what appropriate behavior was. And it wasn't what you felt like you needed to do. Stimming, vocalizing, talking, like all the things that you needed to be a healthy human, you kept getting told made you a bad person. You're a bad kid. You're a bad person. And that
Even
continued.
being curious.
Why do you want to know? Why do you want to know? I got asked that question. All that, no answers. Like, I don't know, because I don't know it. Why don't you want to know? Like, I was thinking about this morning. I'm like, what do I want to talk to Lyric about? And it's like too many things. But that education experience where the adults who are supposed to educate us and inspire us to be learners despise our natural curiosity and desire to learn. Like, neurodivergent people who are so hungry for knowledge should be like the most exciting student to an educator. And
Right?
we're not. Like, the fact that I would do extra reading, I'd get in trouble for that, right?
Mm-hmm. For
Even
reading
in
ahead.
music, like my first school instrument, because I played and sang and stuff, right? My first school band instrument was the flute. And the first week's lesson was to go home and learn how to put it together. And like my little fourth grade brain exploded. I'm like, are you kidding me? You've given me a week to learn how to put this damn thing together. So I came back in and I knew almost all of the scales, and they were mad at me. Like, I got in trouble
Oh,
because I was pushing out ahead. I'm like, what? Okay, why aren't you excited? Because you obviously have somebody that you get to teach that might have some music acumen. Why aren't you excited? I never understood these adults. What was your experience?
oh, very similar. And then even like, like ways I was naturally ahead, like reading and writing has always been one of my things. Like I was the
Mhm.
kid who could crank out these essays in like a quarter of the time they gave us for those standardized tests and still get like 100 on an essay, which is like, how do you get 100 on an essay?
Right.
And it was just like reading and writing essays has always been natural to me. And like I was reading books that were, they only did their little test. It goes to 12 plus. And so I was like off the scales of their reading test from a really young age. I think this was like first or second grade when they tested my reading level, probably first grade. Uh, and they tested my reading level because I was like so socially anxious and afraid of my peers because they were really nasty to me for a good reason. And I was afraid to read in front of the class. And so I would like not be able to talk to read
Right.
out loud in those circle group things. And so I would just kind of shut down and not be able to read. So they tested my reading level. First, they put me in a special education remedial reading class, and then they tested me and did a bunch of other things to see if I really belonged there. Like put them in there first, test later, and then they found out I was reading at such a high level. Then it was like, oh, you can read, you're just refusing to read. Look, and then it was like, oh, you can read, but look, you. Why aren't you so good at math? And it's like these are not the same things. And so it was like
Oh,
when I tested off the charts in one area, everything else that was a struggle became, look, you're not applying yourself because we know you're really smart because you can read. And it's just like, this is not how it works. But as a kid, I believed that. I was like, oh look, I'm just lazy. I'm just garbage.
yeah. Yeah.
And I
And
just
what
needed to know
concern
things too. That curiosity. It's just like I just need to know why. I need to understand things deeply.
my French teacher in high school, one of my French teachers in high school, just like lost her mind with me because I was trying to learn French grammar, which is a bit different than English grammar, and I didn't understand why.
Mm.
So I literally, in order to learn the grammar, in order for my brain to let me learn the grammar, I needed to understand basically the history of language, like a little bit. Like if you could have just given me some history lessons,
Hmm.
I would have probably accepted. Oh, now I understand. Language develops uniquely for a lot of cultural and societal reasons. Uh, France is locked down for political reasons. Like, it would have helped me a lot. And the question of why grammar, I mean, I can understand why that breaks a brain that isn't designed like mine. Like, what do you mean, why grammar? That's the way they talk. Learn it. And that's what happened to her one day. I had asked too many why
Oh,
grammar questions. Like, why? Why do you have to do it that way? And I think sometimes neurodivergent people need to understand a why that wouldn't even occur to somebody who's not wired intellectually the way we are.
Yeah, well, it's that double empathy thing, like it's like they assume because they don't need this information or they understand something that, we just didn't pick up on, on our own, that like you must be like for me at least it was like it was assumed that I was asking questions to be difficult or
Right.
it's like nobody else is asking this question. Why are you asking this question? You must be just trying to like bother the teacher or disrupt the class with your questions. And it's really sad because I was a very curious child, and why was one of my very first words when I was very little. Why was one of my first words, and probably one of the words I said more than any other word.
Right.
And a lot of adults don't appreciate when a young person asks, why? But I just
Yeah.
needed to understand like why things were being done. And so, rebellious was a term I was frequently labeled growing up, and even at home, like I was kind of seen as rebellious. My mom had a lot of love for me, but and she did her best and she tried really hard and things like that. But even then, like she's one of us. She's definitely neurodivergent. I come from a neurodivergent family, whether we're diagnosed and we know it or not. And so, like when we're neurodivergent, but we don't know it, especially when masking is pushed so hard on us. Even though my mom really loved that I was a curious, rebellious, stubborn child, there was still like some of that, like a little bit of pressure to mask that came from it, just because that's what she was taught and that's what her mom was taught.
Right.
And even like I will admit, like when I didn't know I was neurodivergent, I was definitely a problematic person because I would encourage neurodivergent people around me to mask. I'm like, you can't do that. Don't act like that. We're not allowed to do that. This is forbidden. Like, my partner David, who's also autistic, like I would discourage him from like, doing things that like would get me in trouble growing up, or that
Right.
and I was like, we can't act like that. We can't, it would just be like, because it would trigger something in me, like, oh, we're not, no, this is not allowed. This is dangerous. You can't. Um, and so that's just kind of an interesting thing how this really works. Like, even like really great, wonderful intentions and people who are trying to be really supportive, like when we don't know, like we can cause harm, like we were talking about earlier, just the not knowing in itself, we don't realize sometimes when we're doing something that is harmful. And I guess in school they probably didn't intend to just crush and destroy and shatter my little child brain, but here we are.
I hope that that's true. My personal experience with the teachers in my life was that many of them showed obvious glee in making me feel like crap. Like
See,
I
I
had
don't know if
teachers
I'd have known.
that would get the class behind them. Like, how can we
Oh
make Donna Marie
yeah.
feel small and stupid and wrong?
Oh yeah, I was used as an example of how not to behave for sure.
Um, and I think one of the hardest things for me, I'm 56 years old, and I'm still struggling with, is it really true that the average human doesn't know how to be kind? Doesn't isn't inspired to be kind? Because the older I get and the more experiences I have, I can definitely feel like maybe the average human just doesn't know how to do this stuff. And for many of us neurodivergent folks, and granted, not all, but for many of us, that desire to be kind and to be inclusive, that's how we were born into this world. We wanted people to be their authentic selves, and we wanted to know them authentically, which is part of the reason why we ask so many ridiculously personal questions. Why some of us will share at a level much deeper than, hi, I've just met you 3 seconds ago and here is my life story. Um, and you talk about this in your book, and I want people to read your book. So I don't, I'm not asking you to like give away the cookies, but um When we're constantly told that our authenticity is wrong, like a lot of the book that I've read so far is about the damage that that does. It's one thing to speak in community with fellow neurodivergents who may like deeply understand what you're talking about. What do you want people who maybe don't relate to come away with? They don't feel like they have that experience. They're not sure they believe. Like there's so much out in social media right now and politically right now uh, about the performance of disability, the performance of neurodivergence, the performance of chronic illness and pain. This idea that we are not authentic people. And I was thinking about this the other day. And I was like, if I've been told not to be authentic my whole life, and I am trying so hard to be whatever people tell me to be, the energy I'm
Mhm.
giving off is inauthenticity. It's not,
Yes.
I'm not giving off the energy of somebody who's being honest about themselves.
Hmm.
My whole life, my favorite compliment is that somebody thinks I'm sincere. Because to me, sincerity and honesty are inseparable.
Hmm.
And honesty is my highest value trait. I just want people to be honest. I would like them to be nice, right? But I would like them to be honest. Honesty doesn't have to come with an F you attitude. But if that's the way you feel, I'd kind of rather know that. I'd rather
Oh,
like
yeah.
I don't want people to be inciting violence and murder. I don't, but I'd also want to know that they actually think that way because I don't want to be surprised by it later. Right? So I don't want
Hmm.
people to do it and I don't want to shut them up because as long as they're clear and loud about it, I understand. Right? So that's sort of my world. When we're told we can't be authentic, people don't have an authentic experience of us.
Hmm. Absolutely.
So
And
it
see,
may not be
that's,
that hard to imagine that people who have neurodivergent people in their life feel like we're performative.
mhm.
Because if we're trying to behave, big air quotes, if we're trying to be compliant, if we're trying to stay safe, we're not being authentic.
Well,
So
how can
people's
we? It's so
experience of us,
dangerous.
right, right. Okay, so I've said tons of things. I would love for you to have a thought.
Yeah, no, and see that's what I kind of realized when I became burnt out and mentally and physically completely depleted and unwell 9 years ago before I was diagnosed autistic. That, I was in this really low place. I couldn't keep that mask, that facade up that I had, been doing for so many years. And I masked so hard, I broke myself under the weight of it because it just became so heavy. And then, then I was not okay and I couldn't keep it up anymore. And I realized that throughout my life, probably since at least my teenage years, I'd very intimately known that phrase alone in a room full of people, right? Because it's
Mhm.
like even in high school I was, I knew everybody, but nobody really knew me. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
I knew of
Yeah.
everybody. I knew how to like camouflage and blend myself in to make myself palatable to people around me, as much as possible because it was like I was a fly on the wall watching and mirroring and mimicking even when I didn't necessarily understand what I was mimicking. It was just like this is,
Mhm.
this is how we do things, and I just thought that was so normal. And I was surrounded by people that, like, when I couldn't do it anymore, they took it very personally, and nobody was there to help me. And I realized, once I was like, I can't do this anymore, and I I couldn't and I refused to keep it up, like I lost a lot of people that never were really mine to begin with. It was really isolating because nobody who would actually like and resonate with the real me was able to see that person and connect with that person because I had this wall that I put up to keep people away because I was just so really afraid of people. And I just had this feeling that I was something shameful and something not enough. And I needed to mirror these people around me whose brains were nothing like my own because I thought they were good. And the more I could make myself like them, then I could maybe somehow become good too and stop being garbage because I really saw myself as garbage. I hated myself. I hated myself so much. Uh, and then when I hated myself, I accepted what was unacceptable in relation to how people would treat me. And not only did I hate myself, I didn't really know. I got so twisted up in the head that I didn't really have a sense of self. Like I didn't know who I was. I didn't really know what I liked. I didn't know like when I was anymore, I got to a point where I didn't know like if I was doing things because I really wanted to do them or because it was things I thought was expected of me. And I've just kind of been untwisting my mind over the past 9 years, and I'm still working on it. I don't know if this is something I'm ever going to be done with, which is why there's some parts in the book that probably could be expanded on as you get further on, but there's not more to say yet because I'm still on the journey, and I'm,
Right.
probably going to be for the rest of my life learning things that other kids who weren't pushed into this self-abandonment as much as I was learned growing up. But I'm I'm reparenting myself, I guess. Is almost so, like I'm relearning things I really wish I could have learned in childhood in my 30s because I'm 38 now. I think I'm 38. I'm not the math autistic. I would have to go back and do the calculations because I'm the artsy fartsy literature, art, theater autistic. I do not fit the math stereotype.
Yes. Yeah.
Calculators all the way.
Yeah. Um, what you just said gave me about 9,000 thoughts, so give me a second while I process. Um, I think one of the things that many people are going to relate to, and it's so sad, is, you saying that you didn't like yourself. You might have even hated yourself. And the neurodivergent community is heavily populated with queer people. Um, that's part of my self-identification. Um, uh, there's a lot about our community that standard society doesn't just say is different, but says is morally unacceptable. That parts of who we are shouldn't exist. My experience of the self-loathing is, as is everything with me, multi-layered. Definitely had that experience, but it was never alone. There was always an inner voice that said, why? If you met somebody just like you would like them. Why don't you like you? And my inner response would always be, if I'm likable, why can't I find anybody who likes me? Why am I so? Why do people take literal pleasure in hurting me if I'm okay? And it was after understanding that I'm neurodivergent, after re- removing myself from my second abusive marriage. Um, it was while I was thinking about dating. And I was like, you know what? Some piece of me has actually always really liked me, always really liked the deep intellect, always really liked the interest in basically everything on the planet. If you have a special interest, I will sit and listen to you. There's very little I won't listen to. I mean, I have squeamishness, I have things that like I can't because my brain is too visual, right? But
Yeah.
aside from things from the ick factor,
Yeah.
um, I love hearing about what makes other people excited. I love it.
Mhm.
And I wanted to meet somebody. I actually wanted to meet somebody like me. And I kind of feel like that's an experience I hear from late identified, late diagnosed neurodivergent people is that they have this moment of awakening that as much as the world has told them to hate themselves, they would really love to find people just like them because they actually like who they are. They're just told they're not allowed to do it. What do you think about
Oh, I like who I am now. It's hard for me to say because I feel like the voices in my head weren't kind or affirming.
that?
And,
Yeah.
maybe that's because as far back as I can remember, and I've got a lot of holes in my memory. So my memory is Swiss cheese, and I've been working on recovering a lot of those lost memories because trauma is funny. It just was like, it'll be like, you don't get to remember this. Whoop, hole, bye, sorry. So, that's part of something that's not necessarily covered in the book that I've been working on, but a lot of the inner monologue, inner voices in my own head started to mirror the of the voices of people around me, and those were primarily what I would like that the abuse became internal, like it was externalized and it
Mm-hmm.
became internalized, and I don't know what age that really started at. I assume it was most likely when I entered the public school district because I was kind of just let to exist and let live. Because at home, like I was mostly seen as a gifted kid. So that's the other thing. At home, I was seen as gifted primarily because of the reading and vocabulary, because it's like I taught myself to read at 1.5, and I spoke like a little professor that like very stereotypical uses big words and speaks in full sentences when they're like 2 years old. And
Me
like
too.
there's a story my grandparents used to say with like, oh, they talk like a real person. And it's like, I'm two. And I'm like, well, I am a real person. Of course I talk like a real, what are you talking about? I was that child. But I think it happened when I went to school is when it really, because I wanted to behave, I wanted to be good, and I didn't understand what good was when I went to
Yeah.
school, and I was always in trouble. And I really, I was the kid that liked to hang out with other adults and didn't like to hang out with other kids. And in school, the other adults did not like me very much, especially like some of my teachers over the years, and that really hurt me
Yeah.
that they thought I was bad because I
Yeah.
wasn't trying to be bad, and they treated me like it was something I was doing on purpose.
I think that's an incredibly important message that those of us who have that experience of being told we're bad when we're not trying to be bad,
Hmm.
people need to hear it. Like if you see a child technically misbehaving, get curious, invest in that child. Like my first career was teaching seventh through ninth grade English. And I learned quickly to adore that age group because they are deeply obnoxious human beings. Um, and I chose immediately to celebrate it because I knew no one was. And if I was going to get anybody's attention, they would have to have something shockingly different. And my whole point of being a teacher was to help young people learn to think for themselves, to be unique in the world and not be a robot. So, 2 years into teaching standardized stuff, and I had to leave.
Oh,
And the administration was very happy to see me go.
oh.
Students were devastated. My students are like, we don't learn from anybody else. Um,
I realized you asked me a question and I didn't really answer it. You asked me what I wanted people who didn't relate to take away from this.
Gosh, we're not ADHD at all. Nope, not at all.
I know. Like for a
If
while when I
anybody
started
watches my
recovering from trauma, I was like, am I still ADHD? Because I was less foggy and less dissociative. And then it's like I get on interviews with this and I'm like, yeah, definitely still ADHD.
squirrel, yeah, because we only have a couple minutes left. And I think that is an important question, but just to sort of like put a cap on what I was saying was like whether it's a child or an adult, if somebody is presenting or behaving in a way that seems different from you, my hope is to inspire people to get curious instead of becoming judgmental, which is what we get taught to be. So I understand. Get curious.
Hmm.
Actually learn who this person is and what they're attempting to do. Don't assume, blame, and shame. Okay, your turn.
Yes, yes, I love that. And you know what I would say is like I really do hope people who don't really relate read this story because it I think, you know, when we read other people's experiences and it's like this is actually what happened to me, this is what I went through. And it's more impactful because it really does humanize and you know these issues that other people unless they like go, you know, live the story through storytelling. And I use storytelling as my teaching device. And it's something I do in all my books when I, you know, it's
Yeah.
like that I've put out. It's like I like to use narrative and storytelling because it puts someone in the shoes of an experience they don't naturally have. And so I do hope like people who don't have the experience read it and it lets them think about people that they might not be understanding and might have otherwise just judged and cast off in a different light. And like curious, that like you mentioned, curiosity. Like I hope it prompts people to be curious because that's what I teach when I work with organizations and workplace in the corporate world, which is you know, my day job. That you know this atmosphere is kind of tricky. It's like I we need to stop making assumptions about one another and be curious, and that's really a core principle of what I do teach too. So you know, hopefully this is helping you get curious and also helping people learn that neurodiversity is a thing and that we don't all have the same brains. Uh, because even people who don't maybe know they're neurodivergent or don't identify as being neurodivergent it's beneficial for all of us to understand that we all think, experience the world, and communicate in different ways. And it just makes us better at engaging with one another. So we get to be more effective human beings if we don't make these assumptions about other people and we meet people where they are.
Yeah, I'm so with you, and I do think your book will be effective. Uh, I think your book would be an amazing gift from a neurodivergent person to people in their life as a way of opening the door to conversation. Um, and so not only do I hope the neurodivergent community in mass reads your book, but I hope they give it as gifts
To
to people
teachers,
in their life.
especially teachers,
Teachers,
educators, like really need to read this.
yeah, and parents of neurodivergent kiddos need to
Yes.
read it. As a neurodivergent parent who didn't know the terror I experienced of my kids getting bullied the way I was
Mhm.
caused me to make decisions I now regret. I wanted to raise children brave enough to be themselves, and
Mhm.
I was terrified of what the world would do to me.
Yeah.
And I think if I'd had a book like yours to read, even if I didn't identify myself through reading your book, I might have had the courage to make different decisions because I would have read the experience of somebody who was so harmed by some of those choices. I would have had an opportunity to think about it at the very least. So I hope people buy your book. We'll make sure there's a link to where you can buy it, in the description of this video. Lyric,
And really
as always.
important, if people want to call and request their local bookstores to get it, that's how we'll get it on physical shelves. So
That's
that
right.
I'm putting planting
Publishing
that
this
seed,
time. Yeah, yeah, your self-publishing.
self-publishing. So call your libraries, call your bookstores, and ask them to get the weight of normal because, and also bookshop.org. But that way we can support small businesses. because it is in bigger places, but I don't like pushing people there. Let's shop small.
Yeah, let's make sure that the little stores have access to really excellent work. Well, Eric, thank you. This has been a joy. I so appreciate you, and I can't wait to talk to you again.
Thank you so much.